Shocking truth revealed. The royal coronation robe was not just stolen. It was brutally destroyed inside the castle by someone no one expected. What happened next will change everything you thought about the royal family. Secrets, betrayal, and a guard's fierce loyalty collide in a story you cannot miss. Stay with us till the end to uncover the full truth. If you love jaw-dropping stories like this, smash that like button and subscribe now. The royal barracks behind Windsor's eastern wing held many men, but only one carried a reputation heavy enough to silence an entire room. His name was Sir Aldric Dane, Senior Royal Guard. Sworn protector of the crown and the quiet shadow behind Princess Charlotte of Belcrest. Aldric carried himself like stone carved into human shape, steady and disciplined, but beneath that still exterior lived a loyalty deeper than oath or rank. He guarded the princess not only with duty, but with devotion built over years of watching her grow into the young woman the kingdom respected. That morning, the castle air held a strange stillness. Servants moved with softer steps. Attendants whispered in corners. Even the bells seemed unsure whether they should announce the hour. Aldric felt the shift long before anyone spoke, because he knew the rhythm of the castle better than the rhythm of his own breath. Something had changed. Something unseen had slipped out of place. Princess Charlotte had been in the Western Library, reviewing the schedule for her coronation week. It would be the first coronation since the passing of the late queen, and everything needed to be perfect. The entire kingdom trusted her, believed in her, and waited for her to ascend with the grace she carried naturally. Charlotte did not demand respect. She earned it. She treated servants like family, guards like friends, and her people like treasure. Aldric stood beside the doorway watching her with the protective ease of a loyal sentinel. When the royal archivist arrived with a trembling voice and a pale face, Aldric noticed immediately. "Sir Dane," the archivist whispered. "You are needed in the eastern wing. Urgently." Charlotte lifted her head. "Is something wrong?" The archivist hesitated. That alone was enough to thicken the air. Aldric stepped forward. "Your Highness, allow me to check first. If it concerns you, I will return at once." Charlotte nodded, but Aldric saw the flicker of worry behind her calm eyes. She trusted him, and he carried that trust with reverence. The archivist led him through the quiet corridors toward the Eastern Education Hall, an old wing used mostly for preservation work and ceremonial items. The moment they entered, Aldric sensed disorder. A door far down the corridor stood crooked, as if it had been forced earlier. Several servants waited nearby, whispering nervously, but none dared to touch the door again. "That chamber is restricted," Aldric said firmly. "Who entered it?" "No one from staff," the archivist answered. "But something is missing. Something important." Aldric approached the door. "Unlock it. Is already open," a maid whispered. "We found it this way." Aldric pushed the heavy oak panel aside. The scent of lavender drifted faintly from within. The room had been left untouched for years. Only Aldric and the archivist ever entered it for inspections. It existed for one purpose only: to house the cedar chest that held Princess Charlotte's coronation robe. The robe hand-stitched by the late queen as a final gift to her granddaughter. But the chest stood open, and it stood empty. Aldric did not curse, did not shout, but something inside him shifted sharply, like metal grinding against stone. The archivist swallowed hard, eyes wide with guilt and fear. "Who opened this?" Aldric asked. "No one knows. The door was locked last night." Aldric inspected the chest. No dust, no fibers, no sign of ritual handling. Whoever removed the robe had not done it with reverence. It had been taken. Taken quietly. Taken without permission. "Search the wing," Aldric ordered with a voice that filled the hall. "No door remains closed. No chamber remains unchecked." Within minutes, staff scattered like startled birds. Aldric moved through the corridors with unshaken purpose. His boots struck the stone floor with a steady, lethal confidence. He knew the patterns of every noble in the castle, every servant, every schedule. Only one person had insisted on additional wardrobe access for personal fittings that week. Only one had demanded seamstresses to work exclusively in her private suite. Queen Consort Camilla. Aldric stopped before her private door. He felt heat rise beneath his armor. He knocked once, but no answer. He knocked again. Silence. Protocol demanded a third knock. Aldric ignored it. He set his shoulder to the door and pushed. It held. He stepped back once, lifted the rifle he carried only for emergencies, and slammed the butt against the lock. Wood cracked. Metal bent. The door burst inward. The sight inside froze, even his disciplined breath. The coronation robe. Princess Charlotte's sacred inheritance hung on a mannequin in the center of the room. But it was not whole. It had been pinned, sliced, marked with chalk, and stabbed with needles as if it were no more valuable than scrap cloth. Camilla turned slowly, holding a pair of golden shears. It looked like a funeral drape, she said casually. I gave it dignity. Aldric did not wait for protocol. He crossed the room in 3 steps. His voice low, cold, and resolute. You desecrated a legacy. Behind him. Servants gathered at the shattered doorway, gasping at the destruction. But Aldric's voice rose above the horror. Fetch Princess Charlotte, he commanded. She needs to see this. And the castle held its breath. A strange silence fell across the eastern wing. The kind of silence that forms when truth stands too close to danger. Servants clustered behind the shattered doorway, hands over their mouths, eyes shifting from the torn robe to Aldric's immovable stance. The senior guard stood firm, shoulders lifted with controlled fury. Gaze locked on Camilla like steel locking onto a target. Camilla raised her chin with fragile pride, as if she believed her act carried artistic honor. A coronation robe should reflect strength, she said. Yours looked too soft. Too gentle. I intend to correct that. Aldric took a slow step toward her. Not in anger, but in pure, measured discipline. This is not your robe to alter. Camilla shrugged. I am the queen now. Everything in this castle falls under my authority. Aldric's voice sharpened. Authority does not rewrite legacy. Before Camilla could answer, the sound of fast footsteps echoed down the corridor. Light, hurried, unmistakably royal. Princess Charlotte arrived with 2 junior guards behind her. Her gown fluttered like a pale banner as she entered. When she saw the broken door, she froze for a moment, but Aldric saw her steady herself. Charlotte always carried her emotions with grace, even when pain pressed against her heart. Aldric, she said softly, tell me what happened. He stepped aside so she could see the mannequin. Charlotte took one breath, then another. She did not cry out. She did not cover her face. She simply walked forward, slow and careful, like someone approaching the ruins of a sacred monument. Her eyes traced the robe that had been meant for the most important day of her life. The robe her grandmother crafted by hand, the robe she checked every few days to make sure the colors remained bright, the embroidery remained safe, and the threads held strong. Now it stood in front of her. Sliced open, stabbed through, sagging under the weight of pins and chalk. Charlotte raised her hand and touched one of the cut seams. The fabric drooped beneath her fingers. A quiet exhale left her, one filled with sorrow that no castle wall could contain. Then she turned to Camilla. Why? Charlotte asked. Her voice held no anger, only disappointment deep enough to break the strongest heart. Camilla lifted her shoulders. Because it looked old, outdated, funereal, I improved it. You should thank me. Charlotte shook her head slowly. This robe belonged to the late queen. She stitched it with her own hands. She gave it to me before she passed. You knew this, Camilla laughed lightly. Sentiment has no place in a coronation. You are a future queen, not a child clinging to memories. A silence fell across the room again. But this time the silence felt dangerous. Aldric stepped forward. Your Highness, allow me to escort you out. This chamber no longer holds anything worthy of your presence. Charlotte lifted a hand gently, stopping him. No, Aldric. I want to hear what she intends to do next. Camilla smiled faintly. I intend to modernize the ceremony. The robe will be adjusted to match my taste." Charlotte looked directly into Camilla's eyes. Her voice remained soft, but it carried a power that filled the ruined room. "This robe does not belong to you. You have no right to touch it. You have no right to destroy it. And you have no right to reshape my coronation according to your pride." Camilla stiffened. "I am Queen Consort. That grants me authority." "Authority," Charlotte replied, "does not grant cruelty." Aldric watched carefully. His hands hovered near his sidearm, not out of threat, but out of protective instinct. He read every muscle in the room like a soldier reads wind before a strike. Camilla stepped closer to Charlotte, her smile tightening. "You were raised gently. You believe softness leads nations. But your grandmother ruled with strength. I am merely offering you a better beginning." Charlotte did not flinch. Strength without empathy is nothing more than a shadow pretending to be light. For the first time, Camilla's confidence cracked. Charlotte turned away from her and faced Aldric. "Please remove the robe from here. It needs preservation, even in this condition." Aldric nodded deeply. "Yes, Your Highness," he signaled. The junior guards, who approached the mannequin with careful hands, they worked slowly, removing pins one by one, lowering the damaged robe from its stand. Every guard in that room treated the fabric like a living relic. Charlotte walked to the doorway, ready to leave the ruined suite behind. But before stepping out, she paused and spoke one more time, her voice steady, clear, and unshakable. "Camilla, you claim this robe looked like a funeral drape, but you are mistaken." Camilla lifted her eyebrows. "Oh, and what do you think it looked like?" Charlotte turned her head slightly, eyes glimmering with hurt and strength combined. "It looked like my grandmother's love." The words struck the room like a bell, pure, heavy, final. Then Charlotte stepped out. Aldric at her side the moment the two of them left the chamber. The entire corridor understood one thing. This coronation would no longer be only a ceremony. It had become a battle for legacy. The broken door of Camilla's suite had not stayed secret for long. News traveled through Windsor Castle, the same way wind moved through tall grass, quiet at first, then unstoppable. Servants whispered in the kitchens. Guards exchanged tense glances in the barracks. Advisors clustered in corners, speaking in low voices. By evening, everyone inside the castle understood two things clearly. The coronation robe had been desecrated. And Senior Guard Aldric Dane stood at the center of the storm. Aldric moved through the stone corridors with the damaged robe held gently in his arms. The fabric felt too light, too fragile. The tears across the threads looked like wounds against a soldier's chest. Charlotte walked beside him, her steps steady, but her breath tight. She held her hands clasped together, not to appear strong, but to stop them from shaking. They entered the preservation hall. Silent room lined with glass cases and temperature-controlled cabinets. This hall protected artifacts older than the kingdom itself. But today, all those relics felt unimportant compared to the broken robe Aldric carried. The chief conservator hurried forward with a gasp. "Your Highness, what happened?" Charlotte touched the torn embroidery with the gentlest fingertip. "Please do what you can. Even if it cannot be repaired fully, preserve every remaining thread." The conservator nodded, eyes watering as she accepted the garment. "I will try, I promise." Aldric watched the robe disappear through the inner chamber doors, carried by specialists wearing white gloves. He felt a strange emptiness inside him, as if the robe had been a shield he could not defend. Charlotte noticed his expression. "Aldric," she said, "this is not your fault." He lowered his head respectfully. "I am responsible for your safety. That extends to your legacy as well." "You protected me today," she replied. "You protected more than a robe." Aldric met her gaze. "I intend to protect everything that belongs to you, Your Highness." Charlotte gave him a small, sad smile. "Then I know I am safe." For a moment, Aldric allowed himself to breathe more easily. Serving her never felt like duty, it felt like purpose. But the peace lasted only a heartbeat. A messenger arrived, bowing deeply. "Your Highness, the council requests your presence in the great chamber." Immediately, Charlotte stiffened. Aldric recognized the tension across her shoulders. The Great Chamber only summoned royalty for matters of extreme importance, crisis, scandal, or political unrest. Aldric stepped forward. "I will accompany you." "Thank you," she whispered. Together they walked through the long corridors into the heart of Windsor. When the grand doors opened, Charlotte entered with her head held high, and Aldric positioned himself behind her like a wall carved from iron. Inside the chamber, high-ranking advisors, senior nobles, and state officials stood around a long table. Their faces held concern, curiosity, and in some cases, fear. At the far end stood the Prime Regent himself, Lord Harrington, a man known for his sharp judgment and colder eyes. "Your Highness," Lord Harrington began, "it has come to our attention that your coronation robe encountered interference." Charlotte answered with calm confidence, "The robe was taken from its chamber without permission and altered without my consent." "That is the truth," a few nobles murmured. Others stiffened. Lord Harrington continued, "We must ask plainly. Who carried out this act?" Charlotte did not hesitate. "Queen Consort, Camilla." The chamber erupted into whispers. Shock, disbelief, frustration all swirled like a storm threatening to break. Lord Harrington struck the table with the flat of his hand. Silence. He turned to Charlotte again. "This creates a significant complication. The coronation is in 6 days. The people expect unity, order, and honor. This situation suggests conflict within the palace." Charlotte looked at the council without blinking. "There is no conflict. Only one person abused her position." Lord Harrington exhaled slowly. "This must be handled carefully. The public cannot know the robe suffered damage. Panic or speculation could spread." A younger advisor spoke hesitantly. "Perhaps a replacement robe could be stitched quickly." Charlotte lifted her hand. "No, my grandmother created that robe for me. It carries meaning, carries her spirit. I will not pretend another garment holds the same value." Aldric felt pride rise inside him at her words. Lord Harrington shifted. "Then the only path forward is restoration. Complex, delicate, and uncertain." "The conservators will attempt it," Charlotte answered. "I trust them." He nodded slowly, then glanced at Aldric. Sir Dane Aldric stepped forward. "My lord, you discovered the robe in Camilla's chamber." "Yes." "Did she resist removal?" "No." "Did she explain her motive?" Aldric's jaw tightened. "She claimed the robe looked like a funeral drape. She believed she improved it." A stunned silence followed. Lord Harrington stared at Charlotte. "Your Highness, this cannot continue. The consort has overstepped." Charlotte breathed in deeply. "What is your recommendation?" "Distance," he replied. "Until the coronation ends, you cannot allow her access to anything connected to the ceremony. She must not approach you without approval. She must not influence any decisions regarding the kingdom." Aldric nodded silently. This decision aligned with his instinct. Charlotte turned slightly toward him. "Aldric, ensure these boundaries remain firm." "I will guard them with my life," he replied. The council dismissed them, but the moment they left the chamber, Charlotte paused in the corridor. "Aldric," she said quietly, "Camilla will not accept this. She will fight harder." Aldric stood tall, his voice steady as the castle stone beneath them. "Let her try," he said. "I serve you, and I will not allow anyone to hurt what you hold dear." Charlotte looked at him with gratitude that reached deeper than words. And in that moment, Aldric Dane made a silent promise to himself. He would defend her coronation. He would defend her inheritance. He would defend her against any threat, even if the threat lived inside the palace. The days before the coronation unfolded, like a storm gathering strength. Windsor Castle no longer felt like a home, but a battlefield masked by polished floors and whispered conversations. Princess Charlotte found herself caught in a web of glances, hushed rumors, and eyes that lingered too long on her, filled with doubt or hidden agendas. Aldric moved beside her every step, not just a guard anymore, but a quiet fortress against the rising tide of tension. Camilla's presence in the castle shifted from open defiance to subtle schemes. She no longer openly challenged Charlotte, but wielded influence behind closed doors. Every decision about the ceremony seemed twisted by unseen hands. Every favor carefully withdrawn or granted like a silent message. One evening, Aldric stood watch outside Charlotte's chambers. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves. He noticed the flicker of torchlight moving in the shadows near the east wing. Camilla, frequented under the pretense of preparation, but more often to plot. Aldric tightened his grip on his sword's hilt, ready for any threat. But the figure slipped away before he could confront her. Back inside, Charlotte sat at a heavy oak table, maps and scrolls spread before her. Her face showed the weight of leadership beyond the public eye, the burden of carrying not only her own dreams, but the legacy of the late queen. She looked up when Aldric entered quietly. "We must be ready," she said softly. "Not only for the coronation, but for what comes after." Aldric nodded. "Camilla will not stop until she regains control. We must watch every move." Charlotte sighed. "I feel the castle shifting beneath my feet. Allies become strangers, strangers become threats. The crown is heavier than I imagined." Aldric stepped closer. "You carry it with grace, Your Highness. But no queen rules alone." She looked at him with a small, tired smile. "I am grateful for you." Suddenly, a loud knock interrupted the moment. A young messenger hurried in, breathless. "Your Highness, urgent news from the outer guard. There is movement near the castle gates. Unfamiliar riders approach." Charlotte's eyes sharpened. "Prepare the defenses. Aldric lead the scouts." Within minutes, the courtyard buzzed with activity. Guards gathered, weapons readied, horses saddled. The approaching riders bore no banners or colors. They came swiftly, their faces hidden beneath dark cloaks. Aldric rode at the front, his eyes scanning for threats. As the riders drew near, one stepped forward and revealed a crest-old emblem tied to a distant noble house, long believed neutral. The rider dismounted. Hands raised in peace. "Princess Charlotte, I bring a message from Lord Westmoreland." Charlotte listened as the rider spoke of a secret alliance forged to support her coronation, warning of plots beyond the castle walls. Camilla's influence stretched farther than anyone realized. Back inside the castle, Charlotte gathered her closest advisors, including Aldric and the chief conservator. They devised plans not only to secure the ceremony, but to expose any betrayal hidden in the shadows. Days later, Aldric patrolled the corridors when he overheard a conversation between two palace attendants near. "Camilla's sweet. She will strike soon," one whispered. "The ceremony is her final stage." Aldric's heart tightened. The threat was no longer distant. It lived within these walls. He returned to Charlotte, delivering the news with urgency. "Your Highness, the time for caution ends. We must be prepared to face what comes next." Charlotte's resolve hardened. "Then we face it together." The night before the coronation, the castle seemed to hold its breath. Guards doubled their watch, every door locked and rechecked. But even within this fortress, shadows moved. Camilla stood alone in her suite, gazing at the mutilated robe pinned to the mannequin. Her fingers traced the sliced fabric. "I gave it dignity," she whispered again, but her voice trembled. Beneath her pride, fear gnawed quietly. Outside, Aldric stood watch under the stars, and knowing the battle for Charlotte's future would not end with the dawn. The castle settled into an uneasy quiet, as night cloaked its ancient stones. For many it was a time to rest. For Princess Charlotte and Sir Aldric Dane, it was a vigilous, silent watch over the fragile balance of power and trust within. Windsor's walls. Charlotte stood by her chamber window, looking out toward the dark gardens. The moonlight shimmered softly on the dew-soaked leaves, but her heart held no peace. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of her reign, a day she had imagined since childhood. Yet now, the weight of the crown pressed heavily upon her, colder than any midnight breeze. Aldric entered quietly, his steps soundless on the polished floor. He did not speak immediately, knowing some thoughts could not be hurried. Finally, Charlotte turned and met his gaze. "Do you believe the crown is worth the battle it brings?" Aldric's voice was steady, unwavering. "The crown is not what defines a queen. Her courage does." She smiled faintly, but with bittersweet gratitude. "Thank you, Aldric. For standing by me? He bowed his head slightly. I serve not just the crown, but the woman who wears it with honor. Outside, shadows moved with purpose. Camilla's influence had not waned. It only took a darker form. Late into the night, whispers of plots and secret meetings stirred the castle's restless spirits. Some spoke of alliances with foreign powers, others of quiet threats whispered behind closed doors. Yet no one dared confront the growing storm directly except Aldric. Suddenly, the alarm sounded, a sharp, piercing call that shattered the silence. Guards rushed through the halls, torches flickering as they raced toward the outer gates. Aldric grabbed his sword and ran alongside Charlotte, who refused to be left behind. They arrived just as a group of cloaked figures attempted to breach the castle's defenses. The clash was swift and brutal. Aldric led the guards with fierce precision, cutting down those who threatened the peace. Charlotte, though unarmed, stood firm beside her protector, rallying the soldiers with her voice and presence as the last attacker fell. Aldric's gaze caught a familiar emblem, a sigil tied to a noble house known for loyalty to the crown, but also for whispered ambitions. This is no random attack, Aldric said grimly. Camilla's reach extends beyond these walls. Charlotte's eyes burned with determination. We cannot let fear rule us. Tomorrow, I will stand before my people, not as a victim, but as their rightful queen. Inside the castle, preparations for the coronation continued under tight security. The damaged robe had been painstakingly restored by the conservators, its delicate stitches a testament to both the late queen's artistry and the palace's devotion. Charlotte chose to wear the restored garment, not as a symbol of perfection, but of resilience. That night, Aldric visited Camilla's chamber once more, seeking answers, or perhaps to confront the woman who threatened everything Charlotte held dear. The door was locked. A faint light flickered beneath it. He knocked firmly. "Queen Consort, we need to speak." No answer came. Aldric considered his next move carefully. His duty was clear, but so was the risk. Finally, he turned away, leaving behind the flickering shadows and the secrets they held as dawn approached. The castle held its breath once again. The coronation would begin in hours, but the true test of strength, loyalty, and legacy was only just beginning. The first light of dawn crept softly through the stained-glass windows of Windsor Castle. The colors painted the stone floors in reds and golds, as if the castle itself was waking with hope. Yet beneath the beauty lay a tension so thick it could almost be felt in the air. Princess Charlotte stood before her mirror, the restored coronation robe draped carefully around her shoulders. Every stitch told a story of loss, courage, and unbroken promises. She ran her fingers lightly over the embroidery, feeling her grandmother's presence wrapped in silk and thread. Aldric stood just outside the room, his eyes alert and steady. He did not speak, for words were unnecessary. He was there to protect, to serve, and to stand as a silent wall between her and the storm. The castle corridors filled with the sounds of ceremony, footsteps echoing, whispered prayers and the rustle of silk. Nobles and dignitaries gathered, their faces a mixture of awe and anticipation. Cameras and scribes waited for the moment the princess would step forward and claim her crown, but behind the grandeur, shadows still lurked. Camilla's influence had not vanished. Rumors swirled of alliances formed in secrecy, of old loyalties bending like branches in the wind. Yet no one dared challenge the inevitable now. The people's eyes were on Charlotte. Their hopes rested in her hands. As the procession began, Aldric walked beside Charlotte, unwavering as a stone pillar. The choir's voices rose in harmony, filling the great hall with sacred music. The archbishop stepped forward, holding the golden crown that symbolized centuries of rule. Charlotte took a deep breath, feeling the weight of history settle upon her head as the crown was placed gently but firmly. The room held its breath. In that moment, she was no longer a princess waiting for her time. She was a queen ready to lead. From the crowd, a murmur rose not of dissent, but of acceptance. The people saw not only the robe or the crown, but the strength within her. Outside, Aldric's gaze scanned the faces. For the first time in weeks, the tension softened. The battle within the castle walls was not over, but a new chapter had begun. Later, the quiet of her chambers, Charlotte allowed herself a moment to breathe. Aldric approached, bowing his head. "You carried the weight well today, Your Majesty." Charlotte smiled, a mix of relief and resolve. "I could not have done it without you." He met her eyes. "My loyalty is not to a title, but to the woman who embodies the kingdom's heart." She nodded. "Then we face whatever comes next together." Outside, the castle stood tall beneath the rising sun, a symbol of resilience and renewal, and within its ancient stones, a promise echoed softly that no matter the trials, the spirit of a true queen cannot be broken.